So good afternoon, good evening, good morning. Hello to everyone. Wonderful to see so many people here to join us in listening to our amazing speakers today. Just a few words about the Elders Council. Mel, Chris and I started the Elders Council because of the very challenging process of building a social enterprise, and then how do you leave it, and what does that mean in terms of you personally? What does it mean to your organization, and all the challenges that come with the succession and transition. But within that, of course, is where you start, and so much of that it comes from either your own personal trauma or other people's trauma. So we know that during the Elders Council, we look at the journey through and building an organization, and then the challenging journey onward. So I'd like to hand over now to Chris, who's going to introduce our speakers today. And I know you're in for a great ride. Chris.
Thank you very much indeed, Andrea. It's my pleasure to welcome our two speakers today. And first of all, let me welcome you, Elaine Miller-Karas. You're the founder and the director of innovation for the Trauma Resource Institute, a non-profit organization. You're the author of Building Resiliency to Trauma, which I'm reading at the moment, and the Trauma and Community Resiliency Models. You're a big blogger for Psychology Today, and your book was selected by the United Nations and curated online as one of the many innovations being met with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So we recognize you today as one of the key developers of the trauma and community resiliency models, and this is in a sense what we are looking forward to you talking about and hearing you discuss as you develop your conversation with Cecilia. Warm welcome.
Yes, thank you. I'm happy to be here.
It's lovely to have you here. And Cecilia Oebanda, we are very, very pleased that you could join us. Thank you so much for joining us today. An internationally acclaimed fighter of slavery through Voice of the Free, where you rescue, heal, and reintegrate survivors of human trafficking and sexual exploitation, working together with partners who have protected more than 30,000 at-risk and exploited young girls. What an extraordinary achievement. You've been instrumental in the enactment of pioneering laws in the Philippines to promote decent work for domestic workers, law to eliminate the worst forms of child labor, and anti-trafficking law amendments. You are a Scholar Awardee. This occurred in 2008, and you have other awards from the Department of Labor in the US and the Iqbal Masih Award. And in 2011, you were the winner of the World's Children's Prize, WCP, for the rights of the child in Sweden, whose patrons, of course, included Nelson Mandela and Her Majesty Queen Sylvia. You've also presented for the 2011 Caritas Priest Prize and from Caritas Switzerland. And in 2013, you received the Connect Impact Award of Thomson. Despite all of those awards, you are one of the most modest people that I know. And you know, that is just such a wonderful thing to observe in another person. My duty today is relatively small. My job is to welcome you once again, as Andrea has already done, and then to ask you, Elaine, if you would begin the proceeds. You're going to make a short statement, first of all, which you've thought about carefully, and then you and Cecilia are going to engage in the conversation that we're looking forward to. I'll support you with any questions that may come up, as will Caitlin, our coordinator, and I'll help you keep a little check on time. A pleasure. Just to say once again that we are recording this session, and should you not want us to record, do please cut off the video. Otherwise, please put your video on. You're most welcome. Over to you, Elaine.
Thank you so much, Chris. And it's just such an honor to be here with Cecilia and all of you as we have this discussion today. So I'd like to begin with by asking you to invite you to take a moment to reflect on what or who has provided you with strength and uplifted you during times of suffering. So take a moment to reflect on who or what that might be. You also might want to think about, is there a particular source of inspiration or a moment in your journey that fills you in this moment with gratitude? And as you've called up and answered one or both of those questions, I'm also going to invite you to start noticing what happens on the inside. I know that my gratitude was of meeting Chris many years ago in Oxford. And when I was thinking about that meeting, I noticed I took a deeper breath and my muscles relaxed. So that's what I'm talking about. And one of the things we're going to be talking about is how we cultivate our well-being. And I have found that as we start a conversation about trauma, that it is important that we remember and acknowledge what our strengths are, because there might be a time during our discussion that maybe be unsettling for some of our participants here. And if that happens, that sometimes just that brief reflection of the moments that I just invited you to think about might be something that helps settle for you to be able to feel more in balance. So that is the invitation. And if you would like to put your answers into the chat, then that sometimes also can be our collective of the strengths and gratitudes that we share. We sometimes will find that we share with others. So I'm going to start by talking about what is trauma. I've spoken so much about trauma that I find that many people don't necessarily have the same definition as we begin. So a traumatic experience can be defined as an individual's perception of an event as life-threatening to themselves or others. An event that results in trauma for one person may not be experienced by another individual as traumatic. So even though you've had the same experience, people can have different reactions. But we need to remember that trauma doesn't have to be experienced firsthand. And this is especially important for all of us here. It's an important distinction. Because many people live in self-blame and sometimes self-criticism, wondering why are they having such a difficult time when they did not experience the traumatic event themselves. So paying attention to that, especially with our mission-driven work, and how many times all of us have witnessed or listened to the traumas of others and tried to help them. Now, and this also brings me to another concept of trauma called cumulative trauma, which includes historical trauma, which can also be part of our lived experience. And sometimes it's almost a shadow over us that can be part of what also can help us not feel right in mind and body at times, and spirit. So historical trauma includes the resulting trauma experienced by an entire population targeted for disenfranchisement. It, for example, can be, sometimes people are disenfranchised because of their gender, their culture, their religion, their sexual identity, or their ethnicity. So individual and cumulative traumas are not only experienced in our minds, but in our bodies. And Cecilia and I are going to show and demonstrate how you can be helped by starting to pay attention to those sensations that you may experience. So symptoms of traumatic stress can occur immediately following a traumatic event, or maybe months or years before symptoms appear. Symptoms can wax and wane, plague people their entire lives, or appear suddenly. The unexpressed and unaddressed grief and mental and physical health needs may not be acknowledged, thereby continuing legacy and suffering. And I've seen for many of us that are impassioned leaders, that we often put ourselves second. So these life transitions, while filled with opportunities, can also be quite challenging. So as elders, we've dedicated ourselves passionately, tirelessly to the organizations we brought to life. Our work bestowed meaning and purpose upon our lives. And through our efforts, we made sacrifices and received unexpected gifts. For some of us, our life traumas may have served as the inspiration or catalyst for the work we've embarked upon. However, this process of transitioning away from the organizations we nurtured can also be riddled with concerns and at times memories of traumatic experiences. we may have unintentionally overlooked self-care and self-reflection as we continued our lives and ideals in terms of a mission that was larger than ourselves. So as we transition and create more space for self-reflection in this phase of life, past traumas may become more prominent in our thoughts, derailing our well-being at times. It can also be a period, though, of self-redefinition, distinct from yet perpetually linked to the organizations we built. We might find ourselves questioning the meaning and purpose of our remaining days of our journey as we navigate this transition. So the changes in our social circles can also have significant repercussions, affecting our physical and mental well-being. Our colleagues, family, and friends who gave us the most support, some of them may have passed from this earth, for example, or not be as available. A traumatic experience can, so as we begin, and it's very important for us to know and to really understand that there is hope and healing. And Cecilia and I have had many conversations over the last few months, and I'm going to turn it over to her so she can talk a little bit about her experience.
Okay, thank you very much, Elaine and Chris. Thank you very much for having me, and of course, Andrea. So as Chris already mentions, I had been a freedom fighter for almost all my life. I was also in prison for 4 years together with 2 children in prisons and my former husband who are now deceased. So, you know, I live a very hard life. But decades of working and, dealing with the traffickers head on, I become old. And so 4 years ago, I retired. And at first, I'm really excited that I'm retiring, but after a few months, it troubles me. I have more idle time, and I'm scared, and I lost my worth or my relevance, which is very, very connected to my work passion. So it's a really strange and confusing feeling. So while I'm trying to master what we call the art of doing nothing, my mind is really restless, reminiscing my past. And the more I reflect, I'm not at peace, my past catching up with me, my trauma, my guilt, my regrets, my pains, my sacrifice that I made in my life, even sometimes the insult, the burden that you carry, which you thought part of the sacrifices of the greater good. It's really creeping in my life. So it's like carrying body and soul. I realized that I'm also so broken inside, broken, really. I am sad. There's a point that I'm really sad. I'm lonely. I feel used. I don't know what to do. I know that I'm in deep trouble, that I'm reliving my past. So until I realize and take control of that, and I said that, no, I told myself, it's just my thinking, and I remind myself, you're a fighter and you're not a punching bag. So stop torturing yourself. And of course, that's also the time that people comes into my life, new friends. Andrea encouraged me to attend the school wellbeing project. I met new friends. Some of them are here, Yuridia, Veronica. And, these are people God sent to me that helped me discover my inner enlightenment and find compassionate resilience and be kind to myself. And I think that's the start. Was able really to recover and find my balance in this crazy, crazy time in my life, new season of my life. And thanks God for them.
So Cecilia, one of the things that we have talked about And I also just want to also say that Cecilia has been so absolutely gracious and lovely, because of this conversation between the two of us was really, I think, inspired by Chris from your previous appearance and gift to the Elders Council. And when we spoke, I wanted to share with Cecilia a little bit about the work that I've been doing in the world. And that is about how we cultivate well-being and resilience, even in times of great suffering. And when we've lived such an amazing full life as Cecilia has done. So one of the things when I first met Cecilia was when she said, that she was broken, and yet there were so many other things that we've just heard Chris explain and Cecilia explain of the gifts that have come into her life. And one of the things, the vehicles of well-being that I've discovered is our sensations, which is one of the reasons why I invited you to call up something that uplifts you, that you're grateful for, and to notice the sensations inside. So Cecilia, I'm going to ask you a question. And the question is, when you talk about, for example, and I see your wonderful smile right in front of me right now, what are you noticing on the inside right now, as I've even acknowledged and witnessed your smile?
Yeah, I think I feel relief. I feel the joy. I feel loved, and yeah, and for me, I'm really connected to myself this
Yes.
time. When you
And
ask
so yes, and I noticed as you were explaining that and sharing that with us, that you also put your hand to your heart. Did I see that correct? Yes, we've done that many times together, haven't we? So I'm just going to invite you to even notice that. And even the smile almost seemed a little, and the giggle came in, but to notice your hand to your heart.
Okay.
And as you do that, to see, what else you might, I noticed that there's movement in your body and an aliveness in your face as well.
Yeah.
So just notice that and stay with that for just a few moments. And then I'm going to ask you again, is there anything else that you're noticing on the inside right now?
I can say that the breathing really loose. I feel relaxed.
So I'm going to invite you to notice all the sensations connected to the relaxation that you're experiencing in your body right now.
I can feel the energy from
You
my
can feel
feet.
the energy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And is that energy pleasant, unpleasant, neutral?
For me, it's really pleasant. It's
Yeah.
like water running
Oh,
from my body. Yeah.
what a wonderful image. So can you just, for just a moment, in terms of like water running, notice that this pleasant sensations inside. Cecilia, and also I want to thank you, because as you were noticing, I noticed I took a deeper breath and I felt more relaxation in my body as well. So thank you for that. We know that we are designed as human beings, that when we walk into someone else's space, we can often pick up the experiences that they're having. And this is one of the reasons why the model that I created is called the community resiliency model, because it creates that sense in all of us right now. Many of us may be experiencing the same thing. So Cecilia, can I ask you a question, a curiosity question? Is as in this space right now, are there any thoughts or feelings or meanings coming up for you regarding your lived experience that you're experiencing at this moment?
Yeah, for me, gratefulness. I feel grateful of my past. I feel grateful of my life, and I have this feeling of excitement, in the next chapter of my, of my journey.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So one of the things I've learned about doing this work around the world is that when we become in a more balanced state, which we actually have a name for it, we call it the resilient zone or the okay zone or the zone of well-being, that it affects the way we think about ourselves and our experience. And what you just helped us see is that when you are in that state, there can be all these wonderful, really positive statements that we might say about ourselves and our lived experience. And actually, gratefulness is sometimes one of the things I've heard many people say, that they, in that moment of they sense their well-being, can also sense the more, I guess, like almost a wider net of gratitudes in their life. So I know I said a lot, but I'm just wondering if you can even, I'm also noticing that when people express that there is a corresponding sensation in the body. So just like if we suffer, we might feel tight. When we say, oh, I feel gratitude, there's also an expansion of pleasant sensations within. So I'm wondering if that's your experience. So if you think about looking around the room and the gratitude that you experience at this moment, look at that smile. I love your smile, Cecilia. What are you noticing on the inside?
I really feel the gratitude and, appreciation.
And where does it land in the body? Where do you sense it on the inside?
I see it in my, here and in my stomach.
Your heart and your stomach. And sometimes people call the stomach the second brain, that it tells us a lot in terms of when we tap into that well-being. So I'm going to ask you, can I ask you another question?
Sure.
That'd be okay? Because one of the I've heard you say it a couple times, in that sense of those moments of despair that all of us can experience on the globe, that we can, I think, no matter how much we've accomplished, we sometimes feel broken. In this moment in time, as we're sharing this space, does that brokenness feel like it's present in the same way, or is it changed in any way? And there's no right or wrong answer to this. It's, as I said, a curiosity question to maybe reflect upon.
Well, I think for me now, it's not present anymore, because I think I've been healing for a while.
You've been healing, yes.
Yeah, I'm consciously healed. So yeah, so if I talk my experience or my brokenness, it doesn't really matter to me anymore. So I think, yeah, I developed that. I develop also compassion and forgiveness to myself, and the acceptance that it happens. But past is past. It can only hurts me if I allow it. So yeah, at this point, maybe I can talk about the brokenness, but the feeling is not there anymore. And so
yes. So can you sense the compassion and forgiveness for the self? This, to me, is one of the most important things of all of us who are leaders in whatever world we have, have been mission driven for, because oftentimes we can more easily have compassion and forgiveness for others, not include ourselves in it. It's, I think, one of the grand wisdoms that comes from living life is to kind of the knowing of that. So can you just notice for just a moment more where that compassion and forgiveness lives inside of you?
Well, I think I can say that in the whole being of me.
In your whole being. Yeah.
Yeah, in the whole being, because I think I was able to rearrange my outlook in life. I make a choice, I make a choice to to rearrange and see it in different way. I think one major thing that really helped me is my faith, and that really connects me not only, of course, to the community, but of course to God. And so yeah, I don't know. This is first time questions that somebody asked me. Part of mine.
Yes, well, and Cecilia, I'm gonna invite you again to notice. You said, I feel it all over, and to notice that. And then from that, other resources of your life your strengths, your faith. It's almost like the cream rising to the top, right? Oh, yes, it's my faith. So just bring that attention again, one more time, to the sensations on the inside. And then I want to explain a little bit to everyone why I'm asking so much about what you're noticing on the inside. That's okay.
Yeah. Of course, I noticed that my breathing relaxed, that my mind is empty, relaxed, at peace. I feel joy in my heart while we are talking about this. Or so I can say that maybe from the head to toe again.
So thank you, Cecilia, for being here with me and for sharing the wisdom of your life and also some of the tragedies of your life as well. So I want to just explain to the group a little bit. Cecilia and I have met a couple times before, and I explained the model to her, so she knew what this was like before we gathered here today. But one of the things I think is important for all of us to know, that there's a burgeoning area in neuroscience called interoceptive awareness. There's researchers all over the world saying that people, and basically what that means is your ability to read your nervous system. And so when I was asking Cecilia what was she was noticing on the inside, we were focusing on the strengths and resources of her life, of who she is as a person. And you may have noticed that she became more resourced, that she reported to us as we went along, not only did she feel it here in her chest to begin with, in her heart, but then it became her whole being, that she was able to sense that. And so that experience of being able to read your nervous system and paying attention to it, that's what cultivates a physiological embodied well-being. And even though any of us on the planet, of course, have suffering, you may have thinking, well, why didn't you ask about the suffering and ask her to sense into the brokenness, which is what some people do. But when we're working in the way that we do with the community resiliency model and the trauma resiliency model, we first focus on helping the person cultivate the resources that are already there. In fact, I've spent a lot of time in the Philippines, Cecilia knows, after Typhoon Hunan. And I'll never forget a woman in the Philippines saying to one of our teachers, "Thank you for reminding me what I already knew but had forgotten." And I think this is, the wisdom of the Philippines, Cecilia, is always in my heart when I remember that statement, because that's essentially what I guided Cecilia through. It wasn't a direction, it was a curiosity, and a curiosity for Cecilia to explore her sensations of well-being. So every thought, feeling, and meaning have corresponding sensations inside of our body. And I often use the metaphor of a garden. We have gardens all over the world. We might plant vegetables and flowers, but if we only water the weeds in our garden, which are all those sensations connected to our trauma, then that sometimes has a tendency to grow. But when we start cultivating the well-being, it's not that those things didn't happen to us and there's a wisdom of leaning into them at times, but I think for all of us, how do we lean out? And that's what we've just seen Cecilia do so beautifully, is knowing and not acknowledging what's happened to her, but also knowing and sensing her well-being. So with that, I'm going to pause. Cecilia, do you have anything more you want to say before we maybe take questions from the audience?
Yeah, I think it's okay. But the exercise that we made is really give me a lot of clarity, Elaine. It's sometimes we forget really what's happening inside, and I appreciate that we were able to do that in the past. So thank you.
That's wonderful. Thank you. So Elaine, I think we're probably, and Cecilia, we'll probably get some questions, but we obviously recognize too that we have been present and privileged to be present at quite an important exchange, and some of us will be still digesting that. So I think that's also an important feature of this particular session, whereas in other sessions people will jump in more quickly. So there are a couple of things which have come up on the line so far. Somebody is immediately stating to me that they would love to be able to integrate this trauma practice into their coaching, so that's interesting. And I see that Vijaya Patel has raised their hand. Vijaya, do you want to come in with your thought or question?
I must apologize for getting my words out, but I have a speech impairment, which has happened recently through reliving my trauma. But I just wanted to thank Elaine and Cecilia for sharing, Cecilia, your life experience and the trauma what you face through your life. I too can relate in many ways, but certainly tapping in your inner wisdom, as Elaine has so poignantly put across to us. It really helps to heal. And I have recently done a course in personal medicine, which taps into inner wisdom. And thank you for giving us that exercise. And I'm really, truly grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Vijaya, so much. Very much appreciate your intervention.
I also put in the chat, we have a free app for smartphones called iChill that's in English, Spanish, and Ukrainian that go over the skills of the community resiliency model that you can download and listen to. If you don't have a smartphone, there's also ichillapp.com. That is a website that you can listen and learn the skills.
That's great. I'm sure that, thank you for putting in the chat. I'm sure that not only Vijaya, but others would like to download that. Thanks for your intervention very much, Vijaya. Much appreciated. We have a question. Cecilia, what is the thing that has helped you most during this transition? And do you think, as elders, we can help others on their journey through their organizations that are often inspired by trauma? So that's one for you, Cecilia, if you don't mind.
Okay. But for me, what really helps me is the understanding of the, where I am now in my life. I know that it's really time to prepare. I really prepare myself for the transitions, and even not only me, but of course the whole, the whole organization, and accepting also and preparing my new role in the organization and my new capacity. So that one, but I'm also so lucky that I have a very supportive people in my life, my husband, which is here also, Roland, my colleagues, and my family, who I think also very patient with me of the transition, because it's also manifest a lot of changes in my life, because definitely this is the first and there's no practice for all of us for retiring, and it's actually hit us in different level and in different manners. So people around us, they are very, very important to to become really our support system. And for the elders, I think, part of embracing ourselves and knowing ourselves, that the accumulated knowledge and wisdom that we have in the past is still really, really very useful, you know, in this life. I think it is important for us that we're not going to drown with also our trauma, but also use the trauma also to inspire others, you know. And for me, as of now, I'm really very excited that I've become also a teacher, experience and life teachers to other, you know, emerging leaders, emerging, you know, people in the organization. So yeah, for us social entrepreneurs, I know that we are always, you know, on the run. We don't even sometimes know why we are become old and when we become old, but we are here now. And we need to accept that, you know, yeah, that's really the process of life. And we have also to take control and design and rearrange our lives so that we can be still, you know, help and relevant. And because we are relevant, we are useful in different capacity. So I don't really care if I'm 64 years old, whatever. My spirit, maybe I'm aging, but my spirit is young and joyful, and that's really matter. And I know I can still contribute.
Absolutely. Hallelujah. Absolutely. And I see that Roland is with us, which is rather nice. You have, you have brought Roland along, which is great. And
My secret weapon.
well, that's great. That's absolutely great. And I noticed that Adrienne is also here. And is she part of the gang, or is that something else?
Who? Sorry?
I noticed other people are here as well, which I wondered if they were linked to you or not.
Oh yeah.
Yes, I thought so.
Some of them are actually from LA, some of them are from in India. So it's really a community of friends, community of colleagues who really supporting each other.
That's great.
It's a journey together.
Absolutely. Vijaya said she loved your spirit. She put that into the chat.
Thank you.
Catherine Hall Trujillo, my friend, and you are on our global advisory board. I wondered whether you'd like to just reflect on what you've heard. It doesn't have to be a question, but it could just simply be a reflection or a question, whichever suits you.
Well, good morning or afternoon or evening, wherever people are.
Good to be with you.
I love being here. I love being here because my answer to the first question, or who or what has given me strength, it took me back to that moment when the Elders Council first met.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just at that moment when I needed to find my own play group. And I felt like that feeling of actually finding a place where there were people like me that I didn't know, who looked different, came from all different places, but we had something in common. And that is one thing that has really helped me in this part of my life of redefining who I am and redefining who I am, the title I give myself. I was taken back, Cecilia, when you said you were a freedom fighter. I grew up in the civil rights movement, and now people don't consider themselves freedom fighters. They're activists. They're all other kinds of titles for what you do. But hearing that word really reminded me of, a basic identity about myself. So what I took away, I think the most from being here, I wasn't trying to think about it, I just felt it, is that sense of gratitude for finding that I wasn't alone. Every time I see Agnes' face, it's like, that's my sister, and so it really made me feel good all over to be in a safe place with people where I could go inside myself and really think about and feel what was going on and has been going on for 75 years. And it made me feel good and relaxed and happy and loved and all of those things that you said. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Kat. And it's lovely to have you with us, Agnes, as well. So we have two of our founder members on this call, which is, very, very nice for us. Very, it makes us feel good. We have gratitude. Vice, you're one of our younger attenders. You often attend our programs, and we love the fact that you do, and welcome you, of course. But I wonder whether you might want to reflect on the discussion that we've had today, which is a little bit different to the way in which we've had discussions in the past. We'll invite you to reflect with us.
Thank you, Chris. And I'm Dutch, so I'll be very honest. I had to miss some of the call because I had another call come in. So I can't reflect so well, but I always find it super, maybe I should generally say that I've found these calls incredibly helpful and inspiring. Because many of you have such a wealth of knowledge and expertise that us as more younger social entrepreneurs can really learn from. So I only got half of the conversation, but still think that's valuable. Hence, I decided to call back in after a little bit of time away.
That's great. Thank you very much, Rita. And thank you for the appreciation of the wisdom of our elders, which is wonderful. Absolutely. Mel, let me ask you to give us some thoughts. You've been listening carefully, and I know that we'll ask you to wrap up in a minute, but are there any thoughts that you have in between times?
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Yes, I'll sum up in 10 minutes or so, which is my role in life, I think it seems these days. But I'm happy to do that. But I thought it was so far has been a really fantastic conversation, getting to the heart of a real issue that us elders face, which is if we're being really honest about it. And I think this was a really honest conversation about how difficult it is in this transfer period that we're getting older, and actually being honest about how traumatic some of the work that we've been involved in has been for us. And it's almost like we are so focused on the issue, on the outcomes, on the people we're working with, that we just ignore ourselves. And then when it comes to the end, the possible exit strategy, all of these things come to the surface. And so I think listening to Kat there, for example, and from the comments in the conversation, it is about kind of understanding and reflecting on those moments of when you did have support when there were difficult times, when there were inspiring times, and that meeting, that first elders meeting, which I will always remember, was an inspiring moment. We all came together and we went, oh, aha, okay, we're all sharing this. And when we started to share it, actually, because we had conversations like this, the challenge that we're having were released, if you like. So I think this conversation is actually so relevant and so important to, I suspect, everyone on this call, but also to others who maybe haven't been able to join, and we should be continuing to join further. I mean, I've personally, worked with homeless people around the world for decades now, and what experienced their trauma, some horrendous situations that they've been in, and trying to find solutions. But then, you need to have that time to reflect and relax when you're doing this work. So knowing that other people are experiencing the same thing and being in the same journey is so important.
Thank you very much.
Chris, could I just say something too, just to piggyback upon what he said? I think it's
Sure.
so important for us, and that was the purpose of those initial questions, to remember what else is true. That yes, there's been suffering, there's been the witnessing, and yet there's been so much that's come from it. But sometimes traumatic stress symptoms can override the experiences of well-being. And that's why it can take some effort to even focus on sensations connected to well-being. Sometimes when we try to do that, all we feel is distress. So I just want to emphasize that one of the biggest learnings, and I'm an old trauma therapist, is that not everyone needs to tell the trauma story, that sometimes people need to tell the story of well-being and the reasons why, in terms they became mission-driven, that have to do with that social entrepreneurial spirit and that well-being. And that sometimes the stories can be too much to repeat again and again, and not because of avoidance, but because there's a toll that it takes on the body and the mind. And that if we can lean into it, I'm not saying to forget it, but shifting out and to remember what else is true. And I just love the younger people on this call, because I think if each one of you starts cultivating that now, remembering what else is true in the present moment, that by the time maybe you get to my age and I'm in my 70s, that it wouldn't take the same amount of toll that it has for many of us as we age and get to the end of our journeys.
Thank you so much indeed for that, Elaine. Yeah. So here we are just having a look at Caitlin. What have you put here? So there's.
I also just wondered, Chris, if I could ask Cecilia, do you feel that to start to move from being broken and lonely and all the things that you felt, do you think that to move from that takes a lot of courage? Because I just wonder if, you almost build those in as if they are you. And I remember when I spoke to you several years ago, when you were in such difficulties, you didn't feel you deserved to start to leave that guilt and start to focus on you. And I wondered if it took you a lot of courage to start the process of healing.
Yeah, definitely. Because, sometimes we social entrepreneurs, we feel that we are, invincible, right? Yeah, that we can do everything, we used to do in our own terms. But actually a lot of our trauma is there. I think, yeah, of course, it takes a lot of courage, but also a choice, really a choice, desperate, and really what they call that intentional choice. Because I feel during the time that I'm really going to the drain. And it's like really that I'm drowning and I don't know what to do in my life. So yeah, and I'm also really grateful for people who surrounded me and encouraged to to take a step. That's why I think, Elaine, that's right, really, that the community is really important. And yeah, so for me, of course, courage and choice. And the choice is really not only one choice, but it's an everyday choice. You have to make a choice every day.
Exactly. Well,
I have a question, Chris, maybe for Elaine, just building on what Cecilia is saying there. I wonder if there's an issue that's common amongst us social entrepreneurs, that we fail all the time. So, but by that I mean we take on issues, we want to change the world, and we work really hard at that, and we have some success. But if I looked in the area I work in homelessness, for example, yes, we've been working with homeless people and changed their lives, and they've got into homes and jobs and so on. But actually, homelessness increases. So there's a system failure, and when we wake up in the morning, there's more work to do, and we feel we failed, even though it's to do with a global system. So none of us actually are successful because there's a failing global system. So we fail all the time, and that it depresses us. Is that something that you think is real? And therefore, how do we? The answer then is for us to focus on the smaller successes we've had, if you like, and talk about that, but understand that you know, to use the garden story, you know, that outside there's some pretty muddled up jungle, but hey, we've got the garden. I don't know. I'd just be interested in your take on it.
No, I absolutely think that's true. And I think that, you know, many of us have been around for a long time and we've seen the pendulum swing, right? We've seen things, oh, things are getting better. And then all of a sudden things swing and go the opposite direction. So exactly what you said, Mel, I found is true. We need respites for our mind, and our spirit, and our body. And what I've learned is that when I sense into my well-being, and it can be a very small thing, and homelessness is a huge problem. So, I mean, it might be, and this would be individual for every person. Like for you, Mel, is there a moment that you can say, even though it's huge, but I can remember this, and this is still going on right now? Is there something like that in your experience that you could call up or not?
Yes, I think definitely. And interesting, fascinating. I want this to kind of be a one-to-one discussion between us, but when you asked the question right at the beginning, you know, in terms of what's inspired you, I was going, well, lots of homeless people, because actually they've inspired me. Although you know, they've been in very difficult situations. What they've been able to achieve has been amazing, and they inspire me.
And so, when you think about that inspiration, that amazement, like where does that land on the inside? And that can help us stay within our zone, so we can continue to work in ways that we know has to continue, and will continue long after we're dust in the wind, because it's not an easy answer.
Yep, indeed.
So can you sense where, oh, I love your smile. Can you sense where it lands on the inside?
Yeah, no, listen, I want to smile. I'm gonna, if I'd probably go for a little dance now. So what was that? It's in my feet.
All right, well then keep dancing, Mel. Keep dancing. Notice those feet moving. That's what I can say to you. Yes.
What a lovely exchange. Roland, unfortunately, has a sore throat. Otherwise, he would have said what he's written here. And I'll just make sure that we hear it, because he wrote it, first of all, to Caitlin, and Caitlin's passed it to me. Just reflecting, though, that Cecilia has a powerful ability to always reinvent herself, always finding new things to do, making herself always useful. Thank you, Roland, for that. And we
Yes.
and we hope that you get well very soon.
Yes.
Chris.
Hi, Jafar. Nice to see you.
Good to see you. I was just reflecting on what Mel was saying about homelessness, and I mean, this is very much within British context. So there's a single act that made a huge impact on homelessness scene in Britain was a TV film called Cathy Come Home, and which was in the 60s. And and that came to my mind when Mel, you were saying that homelessness is still with us, and it hasn't really gone back to the extent we want it to be. And I was wondering whether that film, in a way, could be construed as a way of reflecting on trauma as a nation. So it was a social activist film. But what I'm saying is, one of the things that didn't come out at the time, and has never come out, is the way the nation was looking at its trauma that had decided not to look at. Does that make sense? And that resilience that Cathy showed in terms of the authority that was so powerful with this powerless woman, where her children were being taken away from, it created a shared allyship around the trauma, which wasn't to do with social entrepreneurs. It was really about emotion, about the story, where that emotion landed within global body of a nation.
Absolutely. And thank you so much, Jafar, for making that point. We're now, ladies and gents, more or less getting to the end of our session, and we need to wind Mel up so that he can give a quick summary for us. But I just wanted to make sure we'd covered a couple of points. First of all, Adriana, thank you very much indeed for your comment. Much appreciated. And we have certainly noted what you said. Fantastic that you're already involved in trauma in the way that you describe. And the fact that we have a wonderful generational mix here today is much appreciated. So thank you so much for being with us. Talia, the same for you. Thank you for your reflection. Sounds like a huge part of resilience is facilitating a space where people can share their hearts and minds. Absolutely. Absolutely. We understand and agree that. And just to say, if you would, young or old, if you would like to join us for free, it's one of the best deals around actually at the moment. If you would like to join us for free as a member of the organization, do please follow the link that Caitlin has put there under Elders Council for Social Entrepreneurs. And Stephen, thank you very much indeed for your appreciation of Elaine and Cecilia. And thank you very much for pointing out your gratitude and that you're in a public space, and we understand that. So without further ado, I'd like to pass to you, Mel, for a little wrap up as we say thank you to Elaine and to Cecilia.
Okay. Yes, it's always my job to try and wrap up and conclude and summarize, which is always really difficult because it really would take me 20 minutes to summarize everything that's been said here. So, first of all, thank you very, very much to Elaine and Cecilia. This was a really great conversation. It was a slightly new way of doing things where we're having the conversation between two people. We haven't done that in the past, but I think it worked really well. And I think it's thank you to both, but in particular to Cecilia for being so honest and sharing your experience. And it's not many people who come on a call and talk about how they've been broken. And I think that resonates with us, all of us, that honesty. And this is a space where we're coming together to talk about how things have affected us, as we become elders and as we move on. So sharing that experience, I think, was incredibly valuable. But then Elaine being able to kind of articulate on the other side about maybe what was going on, and explaining how, looking at inner sensations and coming up with explaining to us what the community resilience model was. And I kind of personally anyway love the kind of analogy around the garden, whereby you'll always have weeds in the garden, but if you water and nurture the flowers and the vegetables in the garden, the good bits of the garden, then these are the bits that will grow and be reflected in your inner sensations. And understanding how your body reacts to the type of conversations that both Elaine and Cecilia were having. So I thought this was an incredibly rich and insightful conversation, and very, very relevant. And I would like to probably say that to be continued. As I say, I all of us are getting to this point where, we hate the word kind of retiring, but it's changing, I think, is a much better word, changing in terms of what we can do physically, mentally as we get older, and what our role is. The issue that's come up a couple of times in previous meetings is coming up again about how it's important that younger social entrepreneurs take this on at a much earlier stage, that we're almost kind of discovering this at the end of the journey when we should have been aware of it at the beginning of the journey. And so that's very important that we share these types of conversation and these insights. As I say, I could go on for ages about this, but I personally have learned a lot from both Cecilia and Elaine myself, and I suspect others have on this call, and kind of apply some of this. And sharing the story, Cecilia, and those understandings, Elaine, has been really, really important, really insightful. And I think just would like to thank you both very, very much for this. It's so relevant to all of us. So thank you very much. And we'll hopefully see you all again on the next call. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Mel. Well, that's it. Thank you, Cecilia, once again. Thank you, Elaine. It's been a privilege to be with you. And between the two of you, you have demonstrated how much more there is that we have to learn. So it's been a wonderful space, as Meghana says. Thank you, Meghana, for that. Thank you, Vijay, and take care, everybody. All the best.
Thank you.
And thank you, Eranea, as well. Thank you very much for your comment.
Thank you, Chris, Andrea. Thank you all. Cecilia, you're in my heart. Thank you.
Likewise, and looking forward to continue this conversation with you.
We will. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.